What is up? Today we are going to learn the mother recipe for steamed eggs, the ratios, the guidelines, and the basic principles you need to know to make basically any kind of steamed egg. So you might be wondering what steamed eggs are, and steamed eggs are basically my childhood in a dish. It's very popular within Cantonese home cooking. It's kind of like a harder jello. It's like silky, it's soft, slightly jiggly. It's basically a mixture of egg and water that you steam for about 10 minutes. It's a perfect breakfast meal. It's super easy to make. Everyone has their variations, but I feel like my dad just nails it every time. This is everything he does to perfect his steamed eggs. Okay, so there are 3 different types of steamed eggs. And I didn't actually know a lot of these existed until I started asking my dad about steamed eggs. So first is the plain steamed egg. This is like the canvas. There's also filled steamed eggs. In this steamed egg shoot, we did steamed eggs over pork patty. We did steamed eggs with dried shrimp, steamed eggs with tofu and shrimp. There's also a third type of steamed egg, which is topped. You cook a topping separately. So in this case, we did a combination of chicken, shrimp, green peas, and turn that into a gravy and then lather that over the bed of plain steamed eggs. But for all of these, there's a common flow. So there's the setup, the prep, and the cook. For the setup, if you are new to steaming, you want to make sure that you have your steamer and your dish all dialed in. When it comes to prep, if you are doing something with fillings or toppings, you'll want to prep those before preparing your egg mixture. And then you want to prep the plate a little bit. And then finally for cooking, assuming you have like raw ingredients or ingredients that need to be prepared a little bit, you want to do that before cooking your steamed egg. For the actual steamed egg, it's just a basic steam on low heat. So I'll be diving into all these things and I'll also be weaving in moments from our cookbook shoot where my dad explains these things in a lot more detail. If you've been with Maylove for a long time, you might notice this is a very different type of format. This is the first of our Cookbook Chronicle series, like I mentioned last week. Steamed eggs is the first of many mother recipes I want to include in our cookbook, so this is like my first stab at trying to explain this concept that I'm workshopping. Hopefully you like it. So the dish for steamed eggs is really important because the shape and the depth of it really affects how the steamed eggs cook. You basically want a shallow dish, pretty wide and about like 1 to 2 inches deep. You definitely don't want a bowl because bowls are pretty deep. The center of the dish will cook a lot more slowly because the heat has to penetrate from outward in.
你點解唔裝個蛋落呢個？
如果你呢個咧，蒸嘅時間會長啲咯。嗱，我淺啲啦嘛，淺啲個碟淺啲，佢快脆啲熟咯。你蒸嘅時間越長咧，佢啲蛋就唔會冇咁滑咯。
And there's also different types of materials. So my dad has metallic plates that he likes to use for steamed eggs. He loves efficiency, so probably like 1 to 2 minutes faster than ceramic plates or other types of plates that are thicker and they transfer heat more slowly. Not a huge deal if you don't have metallic plates.
咬條咧，熱水嘅傳嘅熱嘅時候，會冇咁快。
As for the setup for basically steaming anything, but specifically for steamed eggs, you just need some sort of cookware that can contain the dish that you want to steam with. So you can use a wok, round or flat bottom, you can use a pot, as long as you can get the dish in there. And you also need a lid because steaming relies on trapping heat in the cookware, trapping steam inside the cookware. But my dad does prefer glass because that way you can kind of monitor how the steamed egg is turning out without having to lift up the lid. Again, if you don't have that, that's okay. You just have to check periodically and be okay with steam escaping. And finally, you need something to elevate the dish above the water. So one is not submerged in water, and 2 is not touching the bottom of the cookware. Typically, my dad uses steamer racks.
蒸嘢咧就要一個蒸架上去嗬，一個蒸架晾住個碟。
你係反轉嚟嘅，點解？
我反佢低啲，嗱佢會提高咧，我就想佢唔需要咁多水，我就反轉佢咧，就整啲我想多啲水浸住個碟底嗰度。蒸蛋嘅時候，啲水浸喺個碟底咧，佢就更加會容易熟啲。
哦，I see， OK。但係點解你唔就咁唔加？
如果咪要俾好多水咯。如果你反轉咪高啲，嗱咁高啲嘅話，你咪晾高啲，咪要俾好多水咯。
你唔想太多水啊？
唔需要咁多，唔得。
如果有，
我想個碟底多啲水浸住個碟。
但係如果有多啲水咧？
你可以多啲水就你咪多啲水咪擠多啲 gas 咯，係咪？啊，
But there's a bunch of different hacks that you can do, like you can use chopsticks. I've heard some people use aluminum foil, like they crumple aluminum foil enough so that they can like rest the plate on top of it. I didn't include in this graphic, but my editor asked about bamboo steamers.
Hi everyone, this is our publisher.
This
Hi.
is awesome.
You can, but they're a lot harder to clean, and my dad just prefers using racks. That's just what I've always seen him do. So before any heat gets turned on, before you crack eggs, you just want to make sure that you have the right setup. You want to basically add enough water so that half of the dish is submerged, but not fully submerged because then water will start pouring in. This is another important step. If it doesn't fit within your actual apparatus, then you can't steam it. So if your setup's all good, you start bringing the water to a boil, put on a high heat. The reason you want to do this is because it'll just save you time. And also, I don't think my dad always does this, but I've seen him leave the dish in the wok. Basically, he preheats the dish as he's doing all the prep. I just explained the setup, so now we're gonna get into all the prep. So number one is you wanna measure or weigh out your eggs. This way you can really dial in how silky you want your texture. Number two is to always beat your eggs first before mixing it with water, because this way it's a lot easier to break apart the egg. As for ratios, 1 to 1.5 parts water per 1 part egg. You always want to use warm water, not cold water, because as much as you can, you want to use the most minimal amount of cooking time as possible. And for flavors, a good starting point is half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of sugar, and 1 teaspoon of oil.
蒸蛋通常咧用熱水蒸嘅，嗱
呢個就嚟滾啦。
嗱唔緊要，滾都唔緊要啊。
OK，同埋點解要熱水啊？
如果你俾啲熱水整嘅咧，佢隻蛋咧就會滑，冇蒸嘅時間會短啲。現象係俾凍水蒸咧就蒸嘅時間會長啲，蒸上嚟佢就唔會有咁口感唔會咁滑。
So the ratio is really important. This is just my family's preference, but we weighed out a bunch of different eggs over a cookbook shoot, and 3 eggs roughly amounts to like 150 milliliters of egg yolk. So based on 3 eggs, if you're using under 150 milliliters of water, it'll basically be too firm. And if you're using too much water, so here it's like over 225 milliliters of water, it'll be too runny. The ideal range is basically 150 to 225 milliliters of water. If you're not exact, it's okay. But if you're just starting out, I think it's better to be precise and use either a measuring cup or a scale.
倒嚟呢度度一度水先啊！
呢個係1比1嘅。
呢個係1比1嘅1比1嘅水。
你想轉硬啲啊？
稍微硬少少嘅。嗱呢個就稍微硬少，你想軟啲嘅，我俾多軟啲嘅。咁樣咧就唔會太硬，亦都唔太軟啦。
And as a starting point for flavors,
咩蒸蛋都係會加糖鹽。
少少糖、少少鹽上咯，糖鹽
加油。
必油。
呢3個。
係啦。
assuming you're following the ideal ratio with 3 eggs, a half teaspoon of sugar helps contribute more fluffiness, more silkiness to the texture.
咁發呢個蛋咧，落咗糖一發蛋發上佢棍嗰會滑啲嘅，俾少少油上去一齊發仲好啲。
A half teaspoon of salt is, what salt does, is for savoriness.
啲鹽同糖佢俾到中和嘅作用，咁佢食得嚟嘅口嘅感覺咧就唔會同啦。
And the oil, the 1 teaspoon of oil is actually for like a more slippery mouthfeel.
好啦，再俾油咧我就俾一個茶匙嘅油上去啊，咁蒸啲蛋咧，個蛋就會滑啲啦。咩油都係橄欖油啊、粟米油啊，隨你啊，呢個冇乜問題啊。
You can also consider adding white pepper, just a little dash. For a lot of different dishes, not just egg, it helps tame the meatiness of fish, of meat, in this case, of the egg.
胡椒粉咧就隨你，有啲俾，有啲人俾，有啲唔俾。你俾少少胡椒粉落去，劈即係冇咁腥味啊！俾少少胡椒粉上去啊，少少好啦。
What we do pretty often is we'll add like chicken bouillon or MSG, and that just gives you a little bit more umami. If you are going to add it, you can add like a half teaspoon, basically the same amount of salt. There are some caveats here. So if you're doing a steamed egg dish that has fillings, You might consider using less water. So with our steamed eggs filled with tofu and shrimp, we actually stuck to a lower ratio, so closer to 1:1. Especially tofu. Tofu has a lot of moisture within it, so you just think about how water rich your fillings are. So if it's like dried shrimp, basically waterless. But tofu has a lot of inherent water, so you'll want to add less yourself.
230呢度唔好俾咗水啊，因為呢度有多少水喎。俾一得㗎啦。
As for salt, you might also want to use less depending on if you're seasoning your fillings. In our tofu one, we're basically blanching the tofu with salt.
嗱，嗰種嘅就自然上啦，你想啲豆腐有啲味咯。
But it depends. So these are some caveats for filled steamed egg dishes. For top steamed egg dishes, definitely use less water, stick to a 1:1 ratio. That's because if you have a softer, silkier egg base, then it won't be able to support the weight of all the toppings. You definitely want to use a firmer base, and that basically entails using a 1:1 ratio.
呢個咧就唔需要俾咁多水嘅，1比1得啦。
點解？
因為我要煮呢啲鋪上去上面啊。
如果你加太多水個料擺喺上面，會唔會太重啊？
咪沉晒落去咯。
For salt, maybe use less. Depends on how savory your toppings or your gravy is.
嗱，呢個就唔需要咁多鹽啦，因為個面上要煮啲鹹嘅，嗰啲面係鹹嘅，俾半個茶匙就好啦。
And the last prep step is to oil the plate. So you just add like a little dash of oil and rub it around the rim, and that should seep into the bottom.
俾啲油上去個邊咧，就話唔會黐咯。
So the last step is to cook. So first we're going to want to either partially cook or fully cook our fillings or toppings. So let's just look at minced pork, for example. We're going to add a layer of minced pork at the bottom of the dish. And then before steaming our eggs, we're going to steam that first. With our tofu shrimp, we blanched it and then put it as a layer on the bottom of our steamed egg dish. So in both cases, we cook the filling for a little bit. Something like dried shrimp, you don't have to do that. With something like dried turnip, you also don't have to do that. It just depends on what you're filling it with. In some cases, you can expect you're probably going to have to increase your cooking time a lot more just because there's a lot more stuff inside of the dish that you're steaming. It just takes longer for that to distribute across the entire dish. And if it's a top steamed egg dish, like in the case of our combo steamed egg dish, you basically treat that like a separate stir fry, like a really saucy stir fry. Cook that separately and then pour it on top. So the prerequisite to steaming is basically before you start cooking, you want to have your water like rapidly boiling. You're going to want to mix your eggs one more time just to make sure that everything is evenly distributed, nothing settled. Then you're going to pour the mixture into the plate. So only once the water is rapidly boiling.
睇到嘛？水滾咧，我就閂慢火㗎啦。
點解閂埋火啊？
嗱，蒸蛋唔需要太大火蒸嘅，啲水滾之後咧，就俾蛋上去咯，一邊發咗佢。
點解再發啊？因為
佢拍勻巡啦，頭先你未咩啊嘛？嗱，如果倒落去嚇。
You're going to cover it for at least 8 to 10 minutes on low heat. So the cue here is if you put your ear up close to the wok, you want to hear it just barely sizzling.
已經聽到個響啦，係咪啊？
有少少響感㗎。
Yeah.
I've missed this cue sometimes, and sometimes my steamed eggs take a lot longer. It's okay if it takes longer, you just don't want to overcook it. It's really up to you. Like, if you make this a bunch of times, you'll find out your preferences, but it should be silky, soft, and slightly jiggly. At least the Cantonese version. So this last part I think is also really important. So how do you actually retrieve this piping, steaming hot plate out of a really hot piece of cookware? So if you're like my dad, he usually just grabs it with his bare hands, what we call iron hands or asbestos hands. But if you're like me, for a long time, I only had oven mitts when I wanted to make these for my family. It was just like an awkward experience. Potentially unsafe if you like dip the tip of the oven mitt into the water, but it works.
Now let's see if I can get this out of the wok.
If you want to make this dish a lot, I really recommend that you use or buy a plate lifter because it just makes the experience so much more graceful and easy. And from there, you can eat it right away. It's usually pretty hot, especially if you have tofu. It's pretty deceiving because tofu is usually hotter than its surroundings. So if you bite into tofu thinking that the steamed egg is cooled, you just have to be careful. But yeah, from there, if you made something with toppings, all you need to do is just pour it on top of the plain steamed egg base, and you're good to go. That is the mother recipe for steamed egg, which the goal here is for everyone watching to learn how to cook steamed eggs more intuitively, to like play and be creative. If you want to follow actual recipes, we already have 2 on our channel. So plain steamed eggs is like our 5th video that we ever published. And we also have steamed eggs with pork patty. So I'll link both those, the blog post and the video in our description. For the other ones I mentioned, there's steamed eggs with dried shrimp, filled with tofu and shrimp, combo steamed eggs. There is a chance that some or all of these will go into our cookbook, so I can't post those publicly just yet. But if you are a paid subscriber of our Substack newsletter, well, I'll be sharing drafts of those in the newsletter that goes out with this video. So yeah, I hope you like this new format. This is something I'm workshopping, so now's a great time to ask about anything that's confusing or anything I missed. I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.